Can't hear you, Don.
Let me bring in my guests. My guest today is Brad Doerschuk. Brad is a visionary leader in clinical research with over 20 years of experience in pharmaceutical and biotech development. He's a founder of PharmaMed Research and currently the president and CEO of InFocus Clinical Research. So, with that, welcome, Brad.
Thank you, Don. Really appreciate you having me today.
Yeah, it's great to have you on, and yeah, we're dealing with last minute technical things, so it's kind of an interesting morning to start, but at the same time, I'm so glad to have you here, and it's great to get to talk about these topics. Can you just spend a little bit of time telling us about your background and what was it that led you to a career in life sciences?
Sure. Again, appreciate you having me on, Don. Love to share my story and the life sciences, especially in a realm that a lot of people don't normally think of when they think of careers and paths in the life sciences. But myself, I grew up in Chicago. Go Bears, go Cubs. Attended Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee. Always thought I wanted to go to medical school, thought I wanted to be a doctor, and began to shift my thoughts as I went through college and realized a little more clearly the path of medicine. I left Vanderbilt with a chemistry degree and wasn't sure if I wanted to go with a PhD route. So looked into that, did some lab research at Vanderbilt, and then I ended up going to a big pharma lab, Baxter, in Chicago, where I grew up. And ultimately, through that exposure, I found the clinical side of things, which is the testing of new drugs on humans, phase one, two, three, four clinical trials. And that exposed me to a whole new world, an arena that really checked a lot of the boxes of medicine that I was interested in. But it also put me on the cutting edge of research and development and in a lot of different therapeutic areas. So from there, I found my passion, which is really advancing medicine by leading new and exciting compounds through the clinical development process. And the rest is history, as
Oh,
they
very
say.
very good. So what made you make the leap from working with big pharma to founding your own research organization?
So, I mean, first of all, yeah, founding a company is not for the faint of heart. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears, of course. And I had a unique CRO perspective. CROs are contract research organizations. That word is used sometimes to describe preclinical operations or laboratories or other entities peripheral to what we do. But full service contract research organizations are the companies that run your typical phase one through four clinical trials in support of FDA submissions and global regulatory submissions. And I had a really unique CRO perspective as I had initially started at a large pharma, Baxter, and then went to a CRO that was servicing that pharmaceutical company. Spent a couple of years at CROs, large CROs, and then I went back to large pharma, went to Roche. And the experiences I had at Roche over about 4 or 5 years were really powerful, enlightening, I would say career shaping. At that point in time, I was thinking of maybe going to law school. I had decided against med school. And through that experience at Roche, especially on the large pharma side, I really, again, it cemented my passion, as I mentioned earlier. If you go to any large or mid-sized pharma company or biotech and ask their clinical operations teams to name them a CRO that they love to work with, you're going to get silence because they don't exist. We always struggled at Roche with, and actually, be honest with you, hated the CROs we worked with. But at large pharma, the procurement and legal departments oftentimes only permit teams to choose a small number of pre-qualified CROs. Those are always the biggest CROs in the world, amongst the Big Ten, if you will. I realized there was a need when I was at Roche for a much better, higher quality CRO service. These companies are getting paid billions of dollars and providing a service that we didn't like. So I knew there was an opening there, and I had a lot of insight coming from the large pharma side regarding expectations and what was needed. And that led to my leap to founding my own CRO and essentially filling a need.
Yes, I mean, it matches quite a few entrepreneurs' journeys that I've heard in the past as well. Which is, look, I saw a key problem, and I wanted to, try and make my contribution to solving that problem. Um, I also think, this idea of not being for the faint of heart is something that I personally have lived through as well. That, there are a lot of struggles as well. It's not just all, hey, I get to enjoy the great, working with great customers and things like that as well. So I mean, it is hard. Um, but over your career, you've been involved in so many different drugs, as well, like building of landmark products like Tamiflu and Pegasus and Provenge. Uh, have Can you share any pivotal moments or challenges that you faced during the development or approval process of one of these products?
Absolutely. And I would say, I mean, for each product we develop, it's there are pivotal moments and there's lessons to be learned. We work in a very human industry, so there's always nuances and new things with each study and each trial. It's not we'd like to think it's a formulaic process, but it really isn't. There's a lot of nuance and a lot of um, a lot of massaging, if you will. So with Tamiflu, I would say I recognized why large pharmaceuticals, in hindsight, why their significant funding that they have, much more significant than smaller biotechs that are just raising, seed money and entry funds. Why those large pharmas can develop blockbuster drugs faster than anyone. Ultimately, it's money, it's resources, its experience of personnel that clears a lot of the challenges that others face. We saw that most recently with the COVID vaccine effort several years ago. You had all pharmaceutical companies focused on the same thing at the same time. That's the only way we were able to create something and some products within, I believe it was about 12 months or so, which is pretty insane. So then with Pegasus, it was a hepatitis C program with Roche. Realized the critical importance of having the support and the backing of key opinion leaders. So, key opinion leaders are those physicians who are actively involved in research and in shaping the therapeutic area. And that's critical for any new medicines that are being developed. And whether you're small companies, small biotech, pharma, or large, you're working with key opinion leaders to ensure that the trial design and what you're doing and how you're doing it and your drug target and mechanism and things are supported by the medical community. So that was another key pivotal moment, if you will. And finally, also with Pegasus, while I had fully realized the large serial partners serving us were not remotely meeting our expectations, and they're actually causing us significant challenges to drug development with excessive turnover rates of their staff that can run as high as 50 or 75% across a project amongst their clinical operations team, and inexperienced staff. That was really the full realization of that. And that was a really, again, pivotal moment going back to why I founded my first CRO. And then finally, the pivotal moment with Provenge was totally different. Provenge was developed by a biotech company, a small biotech called Dendrion out of Seattle. And I realized a significant challenge that small biotechs face due to their less significant funding. It can be crippling, and frankly, oftentimes it's left a lot of products at the bench, unfortunately, in our history and our industry. So those experiences altogether really fueled my passion for my process for drug development, in my own entity. I saw things on the big pharma side, on the small pharma side, and certainly felt like the biggest need was on the smaller biotech and pharma side. So that's where my initial company, PharmaMed Research, we focused on helping small and mid-sized pharma and biotech companies.
Very good. So, InFocus has been recognized as a premier full service retina specialty CRO. What specific expertise or innovation does your team bring to the field of vision threatening diseases?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I'd like to talk a little bit more about our mission, certainly, and what sets us apart at some point. But As far as what specific expertise and innovation, I mean, at a very basic level, I mean, we have, because we are so therapeutically focused in one specific area, we have a lot more clinical studies active in retina diseases than any other full service CRO in the world. Includes obviously all the large CROs, public CROs, and so forth. We're working with more retina sponsors. Sponsors are your pharmaceutical and biotech companies and clinics than anyone in the world. We have a pulse on about 500 retina clinics that do research around the world. We have a scientific advisory board that is stacked with global retina medical leaders. Our board includes many esteemed, renowned retina specialists around the world. We have medical monitors who are active retina specialists. So, medical monitors work on our clinical development programs, and those monitors that we have are active retina specialists. Our teams get specialty therapeutic training in retina, not just ophthalmology. Retina is a very, very specialized area of ophthalmology. Um, and then, our clinical staff, generally speaking, they average on the clinical side around 15, 20 years experience, which means that they've been working in ophthalmology, in retina. Many of them have worked at clinics in their careers. So they have a deep understanding that allows them to build a lot more relationships and rapport with the sites and the clinics that we work with. Beyond that, our proprietary systems and processes that are dedicated to this particular therapeutic space. We have a lot of know-how from running numerous studies just in this space, which is very unique. It's one of the most complex spaces in medicine today, arguably. And ultimately, our partners, something that really sets us apart, our partners receive the fruits of our labor on other similar projects that we are seeing right now or that we've been executing in the last few years.
I would imagine um, that I mean, how many CROs are out there that are this focused on one sort of area or body part? Or, I mean, I'm just curious. I haven't heard of, other areas that would say, hey, look, we only specialize, a CRO that only specializes, let's say, in cancer or other things, and maybe they do, and I just haven't heard it yet on a podcast. So that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, Don. And the reality is there are certainly a lot of emerging CROs focused on specific therapeutic areas. I can tell you in the ophthalmology realm, which, I would say, to be honest with you, ophthalmology uh, generally refers to the anterior segment of the eye. That's the front of the eye disorders like dry eye disease, glaucoma, cataracts, conjunctivitis, and different things, as opposed to retina diseases, which are your primary blindness causing diseases, age-related macular degeneration, AMD, wet AMD, dry AMD, geographic atrophy, diabetic macular edema, diabetic retinopathy, and then a whole host of inherited retinal disorders, which are your primary birth blindness causing disorders. Those two areas, ophthalmology, anterior segment, and retina, posterior segment of the eye, are as distinct as oncology and psychiatry. Other than generally being the same body part, they're totally different realms. The delivery of the drugs is completely different. The mechanism of action of the drugs is totally different that treat those diseases. The procedures that you're working on in the retina, to evaluate drugs is completely different, not done in the anterior segment. So there are a number of companies, funny enough, CROs that are ophthalmology specialty CROs. They mainly focus on the anterior segment. They're trying to do work certainly in the back of the eye as well, but they're primarily anterior segment companies. There are certainly oncology CROs. You brought up oncology. There are CROs that focus on CNS, focus on dermatology. Symbio is one I know that focuses on dermatology, for instance. What I do think we're entering into is a wave of growth in the CRO sector that is going to focus on specialty companies because a lot of the compounds that we're really getting into, where a lot of the investment is happening in medicine R&D today, is into areas that historically were neglected. You had your first in retina is a good example of that. You had your first ever compounds approved, pharmacotherapeutic compounds for retina diseases in 2006. That's less than 20 years ago that you had the first ever drugs approved for a therapeutic area, which these are disorders and diseases that affect tens of millions of people. If not, retinitis pigmentosa, Stargardt disease, and others that, when you see people that are, have a full loss of vision, if you will. Those are typically inherited retinal disorders. So we're just now starting to see engagement in those areas, and I think that's the same with a lot of other areas of medicine, which are are ripe for for targeted CRO activity, much more so than the large CROs. Because when you're working in targeted areas like this, you want to have highly experienced expert teams, and that's just something that the large CROs are, don't typically aren't able to establish.
So important, I feel like, to understand the complete landscape as well. But I also think that your level of focus, has to help with the overall mission that you set out, which is to just create a CRO that, solving problems and partnering with clients. But that kind of brings me back to the place where you started with the last, comment was, you'd like to share more about the mission, of InFocus, and I'd love to hear more, as well.
Sure. So, excuse me. As far as InFocus's mission is pretty simple. It's to be the premier clinical development partner in the evaluation and advancement of novel therapeutics for vision-threatening disorders. As I mentioned just a moment ago, it's only been 20 years since the first ever drugs were approved in this space, and the fact is that we are on the cusp of a critical wave of pharma services provider success that's going to be based on therapeutically focused players. And I don't just mean oncology, because there are oncology CROs or ophthalmology CROs or CNS CROs. CNS is a broad spectrum. Oncology, covers so many different cancers. I mean, targeted areas like retina, like Alzheimer's and related disorders, targeted cancers and things like that. I mean, there are some cancers that have, over 900 clinical trials going on right now. So obviously, there are tens of thousands of studies going on across all cancers. So I think a lot of the most exciting, innovative, transformational research and development is happening, as I mentioned, in areas of medicine that historically haven't seen a lot of progress. We've got a lot of mature areas of medicine, cardiology with hypertension, some psychiatric disorders, depression, diabetes, some of the GI conditions, which, have, solid products on the market to help people. But there's a lot of other areas that really haven't been touched yet. And I think that's where we're seeing a lot of investment. InFocus obviously is a perfect example of that therapeutic specialty. I would argue that we were out at the forefront of that, coming along back in 2015, when at the time you probably only had about 10 to 12 products in human clinical trials in the retina space. Today you have 106. So that number has grown, nearly tenfold in the last 10 years. The same applies to the number of sponsors, and that ultimately is about investment. People are investing money where they see opportunity, and the opportunity is certainly in specialty conditions. So, when we're highly specialized, what I've realized too is that, we're able to focus, bring proprietary, customized solutions, tools, processes, because you're so heavily focused on a therapeutic area. It's allowed us to be about 200% more efficient than traditional CROs with respect to enrollment, study startup, execution, which ultimately saves a lot of dollars and a lot of time. So we've set some certainly landmark records as regards to enrollment and quality of enrollment.
Very good. So, what is your approach to building and leading high-performing teams? You talked about all of the experienced people that you have. So with a highly specialized area like retinal research, I would imagine, you probably have a level of focus on, how to lead the team in a way, that's important for people to understand as well.
Sure. I mean, I'd like to say I have, magic wand, but it's a lot of it is feel. And as far as building, a high performing team, a high quality team, ultimately it's really, really critical in my experience to appreciate your teams that lead your projects. Like I said earlier, at the large CRO level, if you have a 20-person team over a large project over the course of, 2 to 3 years, you're lucky if two or three of the people who started on that project are still on it at the end. That leads to a massive loss of intellectual capital that's been built up on a program, brain drain, as I call it. Many CROs, will push their CRAs, especially their monitors, to a breaking point, having them out on the road 4 or 5 days a week. I think that something that's really important with any company is to establish a strong culture, an open door policy, flexibility, understanding of people, different situations, having empathy. Some of our core employees will travel on up to 200 or more planes a year. That's a stress that you need to really appreciate, understand. People that are sitting down the hall from me in our office routinely and not traveling at that level, they don't really know that stress. So you got to know the different stresses of different staff. And I think that ultimately we work really hard to retain a strong camaraderie amongst our teams. Like I said, the industry average of turnover is probably 50% of staff every 2 years. In many clinical roles, certainly, we average a retention of over 90% of our staff annually. So it's very, very important. And that's ultimately, to me, how you build a high-performing team. You've got to keep good quality, experienced people, retain critical intellectual capital and programs. And that's, again, what allows us to execute things a lot more quickly and efficiently.
Thank you for sharing that. So, what have you found to be the most effective way to merge best practices from different organizations to drive efficiency and productivity in clinical development?
Merging best practices is very, very important, especially in our arena where, again, every protocol, every clinical trial is different. Different humans, different drugs, different processes, relatively speaking. So, merging ultimately best practices is very important because we learn things on each project that we didn't know before. So, most important, I think, is having willing staff. A lot of people historically, you have training wherever you started your career and you have an assumption usually that that is exactly the way that it needs to be done always. And so having willing staff, people willing to engage, question how things have been historically done, how can we do them better? As I said, we often perceive that the road has been laid before us. There's a hidden book of rules in our industry that we must follow. There are some guidelines, and we have good clinical practice. We have the Code of Federal Regulations that guides what we do, but those are very limited in terms of the scope of exactly what they tell us to do and how to do it. The rule book actually is very, very small, if you will. And so it's healthy to question, why we're doing what we're doing, the ways that we're doing things. It ultimately leads us to merging of best practices. And again, that takes dialogue, openness amongst teams, and willingness to let your feelings be hurt, opinions shut down. So that's what we do. We encourage people to bring forward ideas.
Very good. So, what role do you see innovation playing in overcoming the challenges of trial enrollment and execution, especially in niche therapeutic areas?
Great question, Don, and I hate to disappoint some people out there, maybe some companies, but the key is quite simple. I get asked this all the time. It's not AI, it's not technology, it's not databases, there's not no magical pixie dust. We work in, as I said, in a people industry. There's billions of patients out there. The key is having deep intelligence on and relationships with the clinical research sites that do the heavy lifting and decide ultimately to commit to your clinical trial. So I don't really see, some sort of technology necessarily making a big play in overcoming the challenges. It's about building relationships, doing what we're doing. We built this massive real-time intelligence database that archives critical details on over 500 sites globally that tells us and tells our partners who's going to perform well today on your clinical trial, who is going to be challenged. And that's what really drives, that process forward for clinical trial enrollment.
Like you said, it's important to understand, and I love the fact that technology is not always the answer, right? I mean, I certainly leverage technology in my own business for a lot of different things for efficiency and productivity, but at the same time, I'm in a very human business as well, and this level of focus on technology. Sometimes people focus too much on it, and somebody was reaching out to me recently and was pushing technology, and I said, look, if you approached your potential clients with how you're going to help them solve problems, you'd probably do much better and not get rejected so much. So we went back and forth a couple of times on instant messages on, with him asking questions. And I thought it was too funny because it's like, look, at the end of the day, we're all humans, and I'm not a bot. I'm, as much as I love leveraging AI, I also love the human side of interacting.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I mean it's amazing. We want to solve everything with AI. I mean, we've had companies come to us recently to, saying they can replace our employees with AI, and maybe they can someday. I don't know, but I still think that human interactions are going to be the drivers of innovation, and there certainly is a place, as you mentioned, for AI. So, but it's not everywhere. Yeah.
That's for sure. So looking back on your career, what's been the greatest piece of leadership advice that you've ever received?
Um, it is it's really hard for me, Don, to say there's one piece of advice that I cling on to. I mean, something that I personally preach is, don't tackle a problem without a solution. A lot of times we know that, especially in business, we might know we might be facing a problem coming up or might have to deal with an issue, at a certain point in time. But I always say, don't tackle a problem without a solution. So consider the solution before you engage the problem itself. And then, but things that I've seen from others that just stand out to me, surround yourself, and certainly your teams too, but surround yourself with people that believe in you. There's a lot of naysayers in this world. It is really, really, really easy to find people that will tell you that won't work. That's a bad idea. You can't do that. You can't, I mean, especially business leaders told all the time, your idea is not going to work. You can't build a company. And so surrounding yourself with people that believe in you, that support you, that encourage you, I think is very, very important. That really that comes mostly from Steve Kerr. I guess I've heard that the basketball coach of the Golden State Warriors, also a Chicago Bull at one point, I must say. Um, and then maybe the best though that I've seen is those that really preach to leaders in the sense that what makes success, what drives you, and Bernard Arnault said, I saw in a podcast or an interview a little while back. I mean, in a business which is successful, you should never be satisfied.
Mm.
And I find it to be so true. I come in every day thinking, what can I do to do better, to be better? And sometimes I'll ask our staff, I'll say, are you making us better today? What can you always have to question, things every day. If you have to push yourself, if you're resting on your laurels, your business is going to stay right there. It's not going to grow. It's not going to prosper. It's not going to continue to do more, if you will. You should always be frightened, he said. In a way, the state of mind is to be positive paranoid. That was his advice, and certainly I believe that. Again, in order to be successful, you should never be satisfied. So that basically sums up my existence as a CEO, I guess.
Thank you for sharing that. And so, Brad, what inspires you?
Uh, Honestly, in business, it's the opportunity to make a difference in the world. It's the same in life. People that take risks inspire me. People that commit to the common good, being benevolent.
Very good. What concerns you?
In business, it would really just be any local, national, global geopolitical energy that slows the clinical research and development process or investment process. And in life, negative energy concerns me. Life is too precious and beautiful of a gift, I believe, to be encumbered by negativity, naysaying, critical ideas, and things like that.
Yeah, I think it's funny because there's a big part of my background in large corporate America where you sort of go to people and you ask for feedback, and feedback to me was, what can I do differently so that I can grow and be better and be better for the company. And oftentimes, you typically would walk away from these conversations going, look, I don't think that was helpful to me at all. the conversation wasn't helpful to me at all as a human being. It didn't really progress, the company forward, and so having a critical mind yourself, is important, but also getting that outside perspective can be beneficial, but also, just having people tell you, hey, look, you're not doing it right. It doesn't really help and progress anything either.
Absolutely, yeah. It stymies the thought process certainly, and like I said, it makes you question things sometimes more than you need to or should.
Right, right. Last question, what excites you?
Oh, I mean, at this point in time, it's honestly in my realm, it's the idea that we may cure blindness, cure cancer, and cure Alzheimer's diseases in my lifetime. I do believe that's possible. And then again, Elon Musk says we're going to Mars. So I guess if he believes that's possible, those things are certainly possible. We're on the cusp with a lot of blindness disorders and certainly cancers as well. So that's really what excites me, drives me every day.
Yeah, and the thing I didn't hear in there, which surprised me, was there was nothing about a Chicago team.
Yeah, I'm confident that the Bears and the Cubs will win again in my lifetime. That'll be good enough for me.
Right, right. So, yeah, well, thank you very much, Brad, for being on the Life Science Success podcast and for telling us about what you're doing at InFocus. Like I said, I haven't had the conversation so specialized about a CRO in the past, and so this conversation definitely helped me. Hopefully, it helps others in terms of understanding what it is that you focus on, but also, from a larger perspective, how CROs are thinking about some of the things that are going on in the industry differently.
Thanks, Don. Really appreciate your work you're doing. It's valuable, informative to the community, and keep up the good work.
Thanks a lot.